What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast, where I'm joined by Kel Domo, R&B singer, up and comer. Move over the weekend. Your time is done. Kel's here, so just a matter of time before he takes over the airways. But gonna jump into different things when it comes to success, when it comes to losing weight, and really jumping into your backstory more than anything, man. But first and foremost, how are you today, bro?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, my man. Appreciate you for asking. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. And I always look forward to these conversations because I find that when we dig into somebody's story, almost like that background, we really are able to learn just a little bit from everybody that I have on the podcast and everybody that I talk to. And I kind of want to know what those nuggets of success kind of look like for you. But the first thing I want to ask you about is your background, man. How'd you end up in Texas? All that good stuff. Like, where did it all begin for you, and where did you discover your passion for singing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I actually grew up in the Des Moines area in Iowa. So I was there pretty much. I was there for like the earlier years of my life. Then I moved to, like we talked a little bit off camera, I moved to Calgary for about 3 years. My family. Then we moved back to Iowa. Then about high school age is when I moved over to to Texas, and that's kind of where I kind of was introduced to the love of music back in like elementary, middle school. I always tell people I always knew I loved music, but I was playing basketball at the time. In my mind, I was the next Kobe. You couldn't tell me I was going to the league. So I didn't want the music to interfere with that. But at a certain point, I was like, we fought this long enough. So ended up pursuing both basketball and music, and then around the high school age, the passion for music took over, and so that's when I started taking it seriously.
No, that's interesting. Well, at least you're able to kind of make that separation early on, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of people will spend a lot of time, unfortunately, kind of going down the wrong path and be like, yo, it's been 10 years. I haven't
yeah,
gone anywhere.
yeah, yeah. You know.
Right. So, but in that time, you put on a lot of weight. Where do you think that was kind of attributed from? Did you just kind of sit back, stop playing basketball? How did that kind of begin for you?
Yeah, so what I'll say is like growing up, I've always been a big dude. You know what I'm saying? Growing up, I was like I was big, tall for like my age, but like I was always a chubby kid. Never really had a love for like my body, things of that nature. Confidence in that way. Basically my entire life, and so I guess for me, you know, I got to a point I remember like seventh grade where I was so skinny you could see like my collarbone like through my shirt. Like I tell people all the time at the gym that I coach at, every insecurity you can think of, I've been through it. Everyone under the sun, hoodies in the summertime, everything you could think of. And so for me, I guess when I was playing basketball, I was I was in pretty good shape, but still never really fully the shape I wanted to be in, to where I was confident in my body. But around college, I was in a car. I was accident in 2021, 22, 23. I was rear-ended each time. Yeah. So, developed some back problems. And so the combination of that plus the weight I was putting on from, honestly, food. I love food. You know what I'm saying? So the combination of those two, obviously the recipe for disaster. And I put on over 100 pounds probably in that time frame. To my heaviest, I was about 360 pounds. You know what I'm saying?
Damn.
Yeah, so it was, and the back problems were getting worse as the weight was, I'm talking about like walking maybe from here to like across the street, like my back would just be like, have this like burning, like it was seize up on me, so it was bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's honestly not that uncommon. There's a lot of people that talk about how usually the injury is a precursor to the weight gain, just because it's almost like sometimes life hits you upside the head with one challenge and it just kind of leads to another challenge, whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
Because now, in order for you to move, you got to move with pain. So it's almost like it sets you up for failure, unfortunately. Because if you do one thing, the movement becomes so difficult that you're almost like, you know what, I'm just not going to move today, and I'm just going to sit back and eat. And it's almost like you use that food as comfort. Did you find that you just kind of ate more because it was one of those things that you could still get pleasure from, and that you don't have to do much effort to get food, and you can kind of enjoy it in a way that you get this pleasure from it. It's almost like that euphoric feeling. Did you find that that was kind of like a crutch for you almost, where it just became something that you almost became addicted to?
yeah. So this is where, and I love this journey of self love because you discover things about yourself, right? For me, or especially around that college, I always loved food, right? The weight gain started actually before the before the car accident, just because you get your first taste of freedom. Now all of a sudden I can eat this at this time and I can do this. So it just started kind of going. But there were other factors in terms of like why, because it wasn't I was eating a lot. my freshman year of college, I remember my routine was, and I really don't know why it started like this, but I have some, theories. But someone had told me growing up, like, hey, GPA don't matter in college. So I was like, all right, bet. I'm gonna just I think I went to class maybe 4 times. But my my routine was like I would go to sleep at like 6 a.m. I would wake up at 4 p.m. I would eat like something crazy, like maybe it's a whole box of pizza for lunch. You know what I'm saying?
Damn. Yeah.
And then it would be like watch TV all day, whatever it is, and then watch TV all day, and then after that eat Whataburger. So it was just like I was going to sleep super late, waking up super early. I mean, waking up super late and then just eating a whole bunch of food, not being active. And part of it was like a comfort zone thing. I think there was a lot of big adjustments that are happening in my life in terms of having to like I said, not having a lot of social. I knew how to pretend I had confidence, but like putting myself in in scenarios where I have to meet new people was uncomfortable, and I was like, I'm not doing that. So I would just stay. It all came down to comfort zone, even down
Mhm.
to the gym I went to. I was used to going to gyms where I was the only person in there. All of a sudden, the college gym, you gotta wait in line for machines and stuff. It was just, it was an adjustment period that I just felt like going through the uncomfortable process of putting myself out there. Um, you know, um, you know, going to a commercial gym, whatever it is, was just too. I was like, yeah, nah. I think that was really the biggest key factor as to why I stayed in that comfort zone.
That's interesting too, because you mentioned that a couple times how that and I know what you mean by that when you're almost like that imposter syndrome where you're like, no, no, I'm cool. Yeah, I got everything going on. It's all good. And then deep down you go home, you look at yourself in the mirror and you kind of feel like shit, right? Where
Yeah,
you're like, behind closed doors, you're almost like a completely different person based off of your own perception of who you are, which is
yeah,
really tough because I'm in the same boat as you. It's really easy to portray that or almost wear that mask in public, but then behind closed doors, you reevaluate the situation that you're in. And you look at yourself and you're like, fuck, dude, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. When did it come to that breaking point for you where you're like, you know what? Like enough is enough. I'm gonna stop feeling sorry for myself and I'm gonna start working on myself. When did you kind of reach that breaking point?
yeah. So it's actually crazy because I knew like my weight was getting worse and worse and worse and worse, but like for some reason nothing really motivated me to take action. Like I would work out here. I was working out, but it was the food part, right? I'll be consistent for a little bit and then fall off, whatever it is. What actually happened, and this is what kind of inspired this whole self love journey, was I actually went through a really bad breakup. I went through a breakup that didn't. I went through the relationship was first love, whatever it is, and that relationship, because of the lack of self that I know now, not because of the lack of self love, there were a lot of things that if I could do it again now, I'd do differently. But I realized that that relationship was a manifestation of the lack of self love I had, and so a lot of things I was doing was coming out of from that place. And then I started kind of tracing it back to, okay, where did that come from? How I grew up. Okay, I never really had confidence in myself like this. Oh, I used to be whatever it is, and then you start to realize that like the stories you tell yourself over a long period of time, they become what you believe about yourself. Even when you get older, even when things start to change. I always tell people at my gym, I'm like, once you lose the weight or whatever it is, like that's just the first step. Now you got to retrain yourself to see yourself the way other people see you, and see yourself different than how you have been seeing yourself for years. So for me, it was like that, like realizing, okay, you never really actually loved yourself, and this is why so many things in your life are going the way they did. This is why I got into kickboxing because I used to fight places where I shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? And I was
Yeah.
realized that came from a place of lack of self love too. Anytime someone disrespected me, you know, I felt like, okay, this person's looking down on me, and that hurt me. So I said, all right, bet. Now I'm about to, and so you
Yeah.
realize, what I'm saying? People don't realize how much actually stems from that. And so really it was the breakup that inspired me to go to therapy. And then after that, I'm gonna be honest, what kind of kickstarted everything was me thinking to myself, all right, bet. So now that I've broken up with this girl, like, yeah, if we ever cross paths again, I gotta be the best version of myself. That's how it started. That's usually how it starts, right?
Man, that's not a bad starting place at all. Like
Yeah. I mean
it
that's the
happens
truth,
for so many guys.
that's the truth. It's kind of like, okay, and now I'm about to. This is where I was when we broke up. Okay, and I told myself, because I knew it was gonna be painful. I was like, I'm gonna go through this pain once, so I'm gonna feel everything. I'm not gonna suppress it. But the person I'm gonna become when this is all said and done is gonna be glad that this happened. And so that's really what That's really what I mean when I said the breakup influenced it. Obviously, there's a little bit of you that's like, oh, I'm about to make her regret. But at a certain point, I was like, it's not even about that. You know, it's
Mhm.
about myself and, you know, actually becoming somebody that I could be proud to, you know, to be. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, 100%. And to me, there's beauty in that because a lot of the times, dude, like I find that we will start things off from a very negative perspective.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need that anger to light that fire up under your ass and get moving. So we all need that in life sometimes. Like I got two boys. If somebody pisses, me off in a way that, disrespects my children, whatever, or if I feel that I'm not serving them in a way that I should, the first emotion that I'm going to feel is anger. But that's okay because like the older I get, the more I realize, listen, I believe that anger is an emotion instilled in us so that when sometimes, you need that extra motivation, you need that extra kick, you almost feel that anger, and then you really get going. Now, does it need to be, and that's kind of where I believe there's a separation from anger and spite, right? Because you're not doing this out of spite anymore. Now it kind of evolved into like, I like how I've evolved. I like how I'm changing. And now I'm doing this out of love, right? And it's
Yeah.
almost like that weird transference. Because I kind of feel like usually a lot of people got to feel those negative emotions, and from that you evolve into something better. And I mean, in your case, I think it's beautiful because it evolved into self-love from a place of maybe disrespect or maybe not knowing who you are. You now know who you are. You kind of took that back. It's almost like you took back that authority and you took that power, that dominion of self, and now you're owning it.
100%. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm an honest person. It did start off as spite. You know, it definitely started off as like, you know what I'm saying. Even though like that's not even the reason why the relationship ended. It was just kind of like for me, I was like, okay, it's natural. You know, you think about that like, oh, I'm about to boss up and do this. So but then it really started like because I started working at a gym. I told myself because when the relationship ended, I'm talking about I had credit card debt. I had no money to my name, like no job. Everything was in the toilet. So I was like, okay, bet. Now we got to rebuild our life. We felt the pain. Now it's time to rebuild this. Was still going through pain, but it's time to rebuild this. So I was like, okay, cool. I need a job at a gym so I can make money, but also get a free membership. And then I
Hmm.
started thinking back because I started doing kickboxing way before I even, got the job. But I was like, wait, kickboxing. So I started looking for like, gyms. And I really just wanted a front desk job. And then, one of my friends was working at a gym as a coach, and he was like, hey, you trying to be a coach? And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, let's do it. And then I always said like, despite what I was going through, because I had bad, you had bad days. The bag was definitely helped me, release some of that. But then through helping people, throughout their own transformations, I started to kind of pour into them and be like, because some people will come and say, "Hey, I'm coming off of a breakup. This is why I'm going through it," and I could relate to them, be like, "Oh yeah, this is I'm going through the same thing." You know what I'm saying? Um, I truly feel like everything happens for a reason in that regard. But I'm gonna be honest, the weight loss journey didn't even start at that point because I had that job for almost a good year before I actually started to take action on my body. I was teaching classes at 360 pounds.
Wow.
But what actually fueled it again, because I actually started putting on more weight as the breakup, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So other areas of my life were leveling up in terms of my identity, things I had going for myself, but the body wasn't, you know what I'm saying? And the back problems were getting worse. I was on blood pressure medicine, obviously pre-diabetic, so many things. What really kind of turned it around was I looked at, and this is around the time where summer was about to start. And again, started as spite. I was like, okay, so if we cross paths again, and we look at where I am right now, this is embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, let's actually start to. And then it started off as that, that pain from the situation, just me thinking about it, thinking about whatever it is, and then it grew into okay, wait a minute, this is bigger than just that, like we talked about. And
Mhm.
honestly, it kind of goes into what we might talk about later about my album, but my album process started the same exact way. Yeah. So yeah.
That's interesting, but I guess you kind of probably at that point you realize like, okay, I got the physical side of things kind of down, but there's more to it. And then that's kind of one of the big things that I train my clients too. Just like, hey man, I could train you all day. I could show you how to work out, how to move, all those things, easy peasy. But until you learn the diet side of things, it's almost like we are doing nothing, because it's the dietary habits that really dictate whether you'll actually lose weight or keep it, right? And I imagine for you, you probably, I mean, there had to be some point where you're like, all right, dude, I got to do something about the way that I'm eating. When
Yeah.
did you kind of stumble across that or actually start some type of weight loss protocol in regards to food?
Yeah, 100%. So the good thing about my job is that it did keep me active in terms of the activity wasn't the problem, it was the food, right? And the thing is, I always knew how to lose weight. Like I knew, okay, caloric deficit, whatever it is, like I knew what I needed to do. It was just and it really was like I can be good maybe on like weekdays, weekends would mess it up. And then I would tell you know the excuse people say, oh,
Yeah.
I'll start Monday, oh, I'll start this day, I'll start, and I would find little reasons to restart kind of, oh, I didn't eat this food at this time, so I'm gonna just restart fresh tomorrow. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
But what really I guess kind of made me change was it was actually kind of a humbling thing. And the reason why I say that is because, like, for example, I'm still on the journey myself. My goal is to lose all the 100 pounds that I put on. I'm down 40, like I
Mhm.
said, going on 50.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? What It was a humbling thing because obviously, as being a coach, I'm like, I know how to do this. Like, I don't need no one's help. I can, just whatever it is. What I realized was because someone had just lost 25 pounds in 6 weeks with me being their coach, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, "You changed my life, this and that." And I was like, if she can do it, what am I? Like, she's just telling me, she's just doing what I tell her to do. You know what I'm saying? And so then I started thinking, okay, why is she able to? Oh, she has an accountability coach. That was the humbling part because I was like, okay,
Mm.
to have to actually reach out to somebody and say, hey, I need you to hold me accountable. I don't, whatever it is. Not for the knowledge part, but just doing it. That was the part. But I told myself, hey, if we're gonna make this happen, we're gonna make it happen. So I got three
Yeah.
accountability coaches instead of one. You know what I'm saying? And that's what people don't realize about weight loss is the first week, maybe 2 weeks, it's tough. You're making an adjustment, right? Especially from the diet
Mhm.
standpoint. After a while, my accountability coaches, they were checking in, but I almost forgot they even existed because I was still doing it. It became a habit at that point. And then once I started seeing results, 360 to like 350, then 340, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. All of a sudden 330, 320. Then I'm like, people start noticing. Then at that point, I was not so much motivated by, like, the results became the motivation. Like, okay, I don't want
Yeah.
to make this, I don't want this to stop. It's crazy how that thought process starts to work as you start doing the thing. It just getting started is the hardest part.
And and to your point, I mean, I've had clients like that as well, where it's almost like first 2 weeks, nothing, right? And it's like, don't worry, just keep the course, and eventually you're gonna see some changes. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's like 5 pounds. And then next thing you know, it's like, yo, like ease up on the cardio. And it's like, no, I'm so motivated by what I'm seeing right now that I want to do the cardio that I avoided like the plague before,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where that motivation becomes intrinsic. And it's almost like now because you've actually changed the habits of this person, in this case for yourself, you start to just get motivated from within. And you're like, dude, like I want to keep this train going. And
Mhm.
that's the thing, the beauty of it too, is that when you build momentum, it just propels itself, right? Because you know that if I continue down this road, I'm going to continue making gains. So why would I stop, right? And the one thing that I did kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into when it comes to the diet, what was kind of the biggest changes that you made for yourself? Was it just cutting out the processed foods, cutting out the garbage? Like, how that kind of look like initially?
Yeah. So initially, um, for me, it was more so, and this is the cheat code. I'll tell anybody who's trying to cut weight. It comes down. I always tell people calories determines the weight, whatever it is. Macros determines how your body feels, how your body performs,
Mhm.
whatever it is, right? The calories was the biggest part. That was like, okay, how can I eat like this amount of calories and not be, like, be satiated? And so honestly, I'm gonna be 100% transparent. My parents, they tried to put me on what's it called, semaglutide, right?
Oh, yeah, like
Yeah,
Ozempic.
yeah, Ozempic, right? And we started with like low doses of it, whatever it is, but it didn't do anything. Like, I didn't feel any effects, whatever it is. So, and they were like, "Hey, like, is it working?" And I was like, "No." But honestly speaking, what actually started happening was I started like, it's called volume eating. This is the secret. I kind of took too long, but it's the secret. It's volume eating. It's eating a high amount of low calorie food. So what I would
Yeah.
do is I had foods that I liked, and I just started making healthier alternatives. You go on TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, and there's healthier alternatives to, like, people. I wasn't eating like rabbit food. Sometimes I would. I like salads, right? But I was taking ground beef and turning it into, like, low calorie burgers, and I was doing things like that, and I was
Mhm.
able to make it work because air fryers, my best friend. But I was able to make it work because I was also tracking the calories, weighing out the food, and just staying within that window. And I stopped, like, the Ozempic. I told them, I was, hey, I ain't gonna lie, like, don't need this. You know what I'm saying? And I just went on to continue and notice my hunger never changed. You know what I'm saying? It was just volume eating, drinking a lot of water. You know what I'm saying? But Ozempic was what kind of started to make me think to myself, okay, how can I, you know, feel satiated while eating this amount of food? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the other trick that people don't also realize too is I had to recognize my specific eating habits, right? And what I mean by that is I know I personally don't get hungry in the morning, and when I
Hmm.
throughout the day I'm working, so I don't I'm not really hungry during lunchtime. Where the damage happens is dinner because that's when I'm chilling by the couch when I'm tired, whatever it is. So I said, okay, it's a math equation. I'm gonna eat less calories in the morning and save a little bit for that dinner time, so that way, like I said, not go crazy and obviously there's got to be a limit. But because I knew dinner was when I kind of wanted to enjoy the taste of something, in the
Hmm.
beginning, it was very like I was maybe only salads for lunch or whatever it is, so I could kind of get what I wanted at dinner time. So that's the trick too. Understand what your habits are, what your trigger points are too, to determine what diet plan works best for you.
Yeah, no, to your point, I got a client who's just like that. I am the exact same way as well. Is that I like to eat the majority of my calories after probably 2 o'clock. Like I'll just intermittent fast now, just because I'm like, well, I don't really need a big breakfast to get started. I'll just get a coffee, maybe have a rice cake or two, and then I'm good to go. Like I don't need a whole lot in the morning to get started. Depends on who the person is. Some people are like, hey, yo, I need that massive meal. I'm like, cool. But usually these people, because they're so used to consuming the majority of their calories in the morning, they're more like, yeah, and then I'll have like a little meal before I go to bed. I'm like, all right, good for you. You know, for me, I'm more like I like to eat it at night. And to your point, you recognize the pattern that you like,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people try to follow somebody else's diet plan and they follow it, they fail miserably, fall on their face, gain the weight, and they never really find success because they try to make something that's not designed for them work for them. It's almost like a square peg round hole. And I think that's one of the big key factors that you found that actually worked for yourself is that you found a pattern, recognized it, capitalized on it. What are some other things that you did as well that you think or that you didn't notice at first were options and then you kind of just took advantage of them in regards to your diet and lifestyle?
Yeah, so the biggest game changer for me, was like, especially because of my injury, like you couldn't pay me money to go run. My kickboxing coach, that I've been training with since I was 16. He's a big guy. He's like 6'8", like my stature. And he told me like since I first started, hey, us big guys, that running, jumping, all that stuff can do damage to your knees.
Yeah.
So for me, and I tell people this all the time, when you set a goal, put the least amount of friction between you and that goal as possible. There's unavoidable friction, there are
Hmm.
you got to do that you don't want to do. But for example, if I hate running, why would I make my form of exercise running? You see what I'm saying? But what I do
Yeah.
like is kickboxing. So I was doing that multiple times a day, and that was the cardio that was burning a lot of calories. So for me, it was almost effortless because I was like, I'm choosing forms of exercise that I like. You know what I'm saying? I'm eating foods that I like to an extent, right? So that's why I tell people like my clients nowadays, I'm like, hey, like kickboxing, if you love kickboxing, do it. If you love swimming, go swim. Like, do something that I would say burns a high amount of calories and then but make sure it's something you enjoy, you know what I'm saying? Don't just do kickboxing because I tell you go do boxing, Find something you like to do. You see what I'm saying? But the biggest game changer too also was like I started wearing a heart rate monitor, right? I was tracking the amount of calories I was burning too. So if I had a certain goal that I wanted to hit, so it became almost like I'm tracking the food in the kitchen, the intake, and then I'm also tracking the burning too. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, my goal is to hit, like, I would burn 1,000 calories a class, to kickboxing class. And I'm like, but I would have to hit it. Like, if I was at 800, boom, I'm boom, 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 just like that. So it became almost like a game for me. Okay, how can I, plug and drop this? How can I burn the calories here and take it out here? So those are kind of the things that I guess for me that I was doing that I recognized for myself, and now I tell myself like, hey, when the weight fully comes off, I might just go run just because now I finally can. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know. So yeah, that's kind of what it is for me.
No, dude, I think everything that you said makes perfect sense. And starting off with one of the key words that you said there, I mean, it's something that you cannot gloss over, man. One of the most important things and concepts, if you want to lose weight or do anything in this life, is gamify it. So in your case, like you kind of said, like, oh, it kind of became a game. But dude, when you have that mindset to it, it's almost like you adopt it, almost becomes a form of play, right? So now that it's play, it becomes fun, and it's kind of more something casual, even though you're making big changes. But sometimes people kind of had that perspective that you mentioned earlier. It's almost like I had to do the hardest thing, the most painful thing to lose the weight. It's like, no, usually it's not like that at all. Like I get people started on like, let's just do 5,000 steps a day. Like, listen, you've never walked before, you've
Yeah,
never tracked your steps. Let's
yeah,
start off with that.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think for me, what I encourage anybody out there who's watching this is, because when you go on your journey, people start, you might hit you might hit plateaus, you might hit, you might lose motivation. For me, I went on a vacation halfway through, which, and ironically, I didn't to Europe, and ironically, I didn't gain any, actually lost weight out there. So when I came back, I started getting all the food that I missed, that I started kind of not gaining, but the gain stopped because the habit was broken of me being able
Hmm.
to, and that's why I say it's a journey. But the thing is, you have to recognize, okay, like, hey, I'm falling off, but need to get back on this, right? And then the other thing that I tell people, because what I used to do in the beginning, because like I said, I was burning so many calories, I would lose, like, in the beginning, it's water weight, but I was obsessed with seeing the scale go down. So I would weigh
Yeah.
myself maybe almost every single day just to watch it boom, go down, go down, go down. And then at a certain point, when I stopped doing that, I noticed, I was like, yeah, I'm about to go eat this Chick-fil-A right now. Like, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? But I realized it became, you have to do the steps. You have to take the action. It's called delayed gratification.
Hmm.
When I was weighing myself every day, the effort I was putting in was contingent on if I was getting that immediate, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
results. But I was like, nah, you know what? I'm not even gonna look at that scale. Like once a week, maybe, whatever it is. But I'm gonna do the action regardless. And even if I check that scale and it's not where I want it to be, I'm gonna do the action regardless, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna happen eventually, right?
Yeah.
But you have to train yourself to do the steps regardless. Take the necessary steps, and stop looking for the immediate, like, oh, I want to see 10 pounds the next, just do the actions and the results are going to come.
100%. Yeah. It's all about staying the course. And to your
Yeah.
point, it is that delayed gratification. Sometimes you're not going to see it right off the hop. You're just not. Like, and it's like that in life as well, where it's like, listen, if it's like your first album you ever dropped and
Hmm.
you're expecting it to go platinum or whatever the case may be, it's like, well, it doesn't really work like that. Sometimes you got to put that effort in. And then I forgot who it was. I think it was Michael Jordan or something said that the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? And sometimes those opportunities and those changes that you're looking for almost tend to just happen from you just staying the course and working, 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 working. And eventually some just changes. And we can't really explain it. And it's kind of like serendipitous in the way that it just kind of happens. But if you didn't put the work in, you were never going to get there. Right. And I think that's one of the beautiful things is that now you have the patterns, you have that developed. Now it's just kind of, reaching that next level. And it's like slowly but surely, but you're on the way there. Right. One thing I did want to touch on though with your accountability coaches, what is it that you're talking about with them now? Because I mean, you're doing the work now, right? What does
Hmm.
it kind of look like when you talk to your accountability coach about what it is that you're doing?
So for me, I chose three specific people and I was selective with it because I knew for myself I couldn't actually, I'm lying. I choose three coaches and all my people at my job. The reason why is because I knew for myself I needed people who weren't afraid to tell me when I was falling off, right? Weren't
Hmm.
afraid to, to like, basically like not make fun of me, but there's a word for it, like shame. Like, and I know shame has a negative connotation, but if I'm like messing up, I don't want you to be like, it's okay, we'll start next. Like, you got to be like, hey, Kel, what
Yeah.
you doing? You know what I'm saying? So I chose my best friend who, like I'm talking about from everything I do, my music, everything like that. He's the most authentic person out there to a fault. Sometimes, you know, we kind of joke like this. If I send him a song he don't like, he'd be like, "Bro, delete that right now." And then, I'll be like, but it's like that's our thing though, So I obviously
Yeah.
in a kind of way. But I chose him. I chose my kickboxing coach, who, like I said, I've been working with since I was a kid. And then I chose a good friend of mine too, who also is a coach. But in particular, I like the fact that he stands on like the whole his one thing is discipline. He was big on discipline. Like that's a key thing for himself. And I saw it. Honestly, he's the one that it was him, and then also that kind of made me think, okay, an accountability coach might help because something he posted about being on his own journey. Then I was like, hey, I'm on the same journey too. And he was like, what if we hold each other accountable? And I was like, bet. And that's what made me think, okay, I'm about to go reach out to this guy. So that's. But to answer your question, nowadays it's more so just like checking in, hey, how you doing? Because now it's become a habit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like, hey, how you doing? You still on it? Hey, you still doing what you gotta do? Whatever it is. Um, And it got to a point, yeah, like I said, those conversations are becoming, I don't say less frequent, but they're becoming less in depth because I'm just like, yeah, I'm still doing it.
Yeah. Still stay in the path, which is kind of what you want to hear as the accountability coach. It's like, I don't want to go in there and have to be like, hey, like, how come you fell off this week? You know, you didn't log your food or whatever the case may be. It's more than anything like, hey, stay the course. You're on the right path. Keep it going. Keep it going. But it's interesting that you mentioned how these habits have kept you on the path now, and how the accountability sessions, I guess, or the time that you do spend with your coaches is pretty much, it's probably just more of a check-in of how you're doing. When you learn these principles of discipline, how did that actually carry over into other aspects of your life, mainly your music? Did it make you take things more seriously? Were you more effective? Like, how did that kind of go for you?
Yeah, so I'll say for me, it changed my, I guess, identity in a way, because when I was training, what partly kind of helped the motivation too is because I started to kind of treat myself like I was like a fighter, like I was a boxer, right? So I was like, hey, you know, I treated like I was training for a fight. So in a way,
Yeah.
weirdly enough, my brain started kind of identifying as a disciplined person, as a, like a person in training camp, right? And
Hmm.
so then it kind of seeped into the other things I was doing in terms of, like, my music, and putting out music, and working on this and working on my content and working on whatever it is, and just having that structure kind of just, I started putting it into other places. Okay, I have a checklist now. Okay, I'm gonna hit this every single day. I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna schedule this. But what actually started to happen, and this is why I said there's a big parallel between this album that I've been working on and this fitness journey, because it all starts from the same place, the self love discovery, right? And so in the beginning, it all started from this place of spite, like, oh, I'm about to prove this, or I'm about to, or I'm about to talk about how she did this on the album. And then it just became a place for me to vent, just like, okay, I just need to get this shit out, like, if to get off my chest. Then it became a place where, okay, now that it's helping me, okay, now I'm about to, talk about the journey. Because now I've realized, okay, I've lacked self love, and now I'm finally. So then the album and the weight loss journey became about that, realizing the self love. And then it didn't. Then it became bigger than me, because what started to happen was I was inspiring people. I was talking to people who were going through the same things as me, but didn't have the insight, or rather the realization in their own life, that it came from a lack of self love. And I was like, I got to get my message out there, because there's a lot of young guys who never hear this or never are taught these lessons, and go suffer from self image issues, sometimes depression, things of that nature. But if they would have had somebody to walk them through this process, especially the first heartbreak, what I'm saying? Like I said, they'll grow and benefit from it. And the same thing came from the weight loss side. I was like, there's people who have never been confident in their body,
Hmm.
who, it all just came hand in hand, to where that's really what's motivating me right now. Obviously, I have this image in my mind of the final version of Kel that pushes me every single day. Like, I'm going to hit that. I'm not there yet. I'm going to hit that. But now it's bigger than me. So I'm like, I can't fall off. This guy's over here, counting on me to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? This guy
Yeah.
over here is, what I'm saying? So I got to get my message out there, because this person will benefit from hearing it. So that's typically how it started for me. It became about proving something to somebody. Then it became about my own journey. Then it became about helping others. So I think that's the parallel that it had with both the music and the fitness side of it.
Yeah, dude. And it makes perfect sense. You can't really succeed in one aspect of life and then completely not use those tools after you figure them out in other aspects. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. One key thing that you did mention there was how you want a lot of young guys to basically listen to this message and take something positive from it. So that makes me want to dive into, what is kind of the message of your music right now? What is it that you're focusing on? Is it more like the heartbreak, the feelings? Is it all about that? Or is it just kind of you and your emotions, talking about different things that are relatable to what we're discussing today?
Yeah. So in terms of the music that's getting out and being released, we just having a good time. You know what I'm saying? We putting out, the bangers to get you dancing. I mean, I do, like, I say my style is Afro, R&B, and hip hop. Like I said, I come from
Nice.
Tanzania, so it's a lot of Afro beats, but you have the R&B, and then you have the rap. Rap's where I started before all this
Mhm.
beat stuff. And so right now it's just been kind of experimenting with my sound, it's really just putting out songs just for the sake of having fun with it while we're working on this album. The album
Mhm.
is called Love Me, and it's like love me period, question mark period. So it's like, it starts off as a question, then it's a statement, I love me, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The journey of seeking for validation versus realizing, hey, it comes from me. So That album is more so introspective about, self love. It's a little bit more emotional. It's deeper. Probably it's gonna be my most honest project I've ever put out. That's why it's taken so long to come out too, because I had to get to a place where I was ready to say these things and put them out there. Because essentially me putting out this album is almost me also, you know, like releasing everything that maybe things, things you wish you said, things you wish you didn't do, it's really just putting it all out there, but for the
Hmm.
benefit of the listener to be able to realize this is my journey and this is where I ended up and this is where, you could be too.
Hmm.
And it's a journey I walk every single day. You still have patterns that you pick up from young age that when certain things happen, they um, triggers you to kind of go back to those old mindsets. And you have to retrain yourself. Hey, nope, nope. You know what I'm saying? We're not. That's not who we are anymore. That's not who we. Nope. This is not. You know what I'm saying? You have to retrain yourself to believe the new version. You know what I'm saying? So it's a journey every single day to continue to love yourself like that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of it seems like that was a big shift for you these past couple of years. It's almost like learning what that really means. And then the beauty of that is that now you're putting into your art, which is something that, I look forward to actually listening to because it's authentic and it's something that I think gets missed out a lot in this world that we live in. When a lot of people will say things, but it's like, you're not really following through with any of the things you discussed in this life.
Yep.
Whereas here it's kind of like, no, this it's almost like I want to hear about how the diamond was formed. What kind of pressure did you go through? And now,
Yep.
I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it all come together, and it makes perfect sense, right? Because you can take something that's tarnished and seems imperfect and make it something spectacular. And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting, and I like where you're going with it. And the message seems to be really, really positive.
Appreciate it.
And I think, you know what, it's only going to be a matter of time, right, until you kind of perfect your craft. And maybe this album isn't going to do spectacular things, but I think as you continue, it's just going to keep getting better and better and better, right? But
Yeah.
that being said, I'm still hoping that you drop it, make it to top 100 Billboard America.
I mean, with this album, like I said, this album could, sell like it could do. It's for me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
people were telling me like, yo, we need, my fan, my supporters, everybody, they want a different vibe from me. We want the rap, we want the Afro beats, we want the R&B, we want the, and I'm like, hey, this one's for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, this
Yeah.
one, I gotta get out there for the purpose of. So honestly, even just me putting it out, that's the win for me. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Just because of how the things I'm talking about, the journey, things like that. This is like a passion project, and if I can help people along the way, that's beautiful. But and if it blows up and does whatever it needs to do, obviously that's the goal. Anytime you put out music for it to be
Hmm.
successful, but to me, the biggest metric of success is the fact that I just got the message out there. If this
Yeah.
is not the album that takes me off, and the next one is, I'll still look back at this one and be like, hey, this was a classic for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it seems like it's almost therapeutic. You're taking everything, you're putting it into the art, right? And that's kind of, I love to hear that because it always gives me chills where I'm like, okay, this is, and I think people relate to that too. When I hear something that's authentic and I hear about how like this all came about, it's like, now I'm curious. Now I want to know more about this. Now I want to see how you actually make this and bring it to fruition because you almost manifested this, right? And through so many different things in your life, it's almost like it came to this point. And you're right. Maybe everything else after the fact will, catapult you to massive success. But at the same time, it's like you almost need to get this expression out of you, which I think is beautiful. Poetically said, but hey, you're the poet, so it makes sense.
It's crazy too because like, um, for me, it's actually funny because like when the situation first happened, all my people around me, even people who support my music, they were like, I'm sorry you're going through that, but the album's gonna be fired. That's before I even had an album in mind, and I was like, I'm not thinking about music right now. You know what I'm saying? And then like when I got to a point of like the first song I put out was called Anybody, and it's a song that it was almost a message to my future self because at the time I'm feeling nothing that I'm talking about in that song. That song's
Mhm.
all about recognizing your value. You know what I'm saying? Loving yourself. Being like me. It's like keep the bad energy away from me. Like I'm about to boss up. At the time I was at my lowest. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
to me it was like this song is a manifestation of where I'm going to be. So I'm gonna make this song and put it out as like I'm claiming this. Like this is gonna be where I'm gonna be. And I remember it was like because that year it was like my birthday, and I didn't do nothing. Like I was depressed. And then the next year it was my birthday. I was surrounded by people I love. I was happy, and I listened to the song, and I was like, hey, what I'm saying, we made it happen. And so that's a big theme in my life. Like when I say I'm stubborn. Like when I say I'm gonna do something, like it's gonna end up happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, so I know the same thing's gonna happen with this album. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna do what it's meant to do.
Yeah. And one of the things that you keep touching on is identity. Where do you, or better yet, I was thinking about this question as you were saying this, is like, what or how did you identify as prior to, let's say, losing the weight, the girlfriend, all that stuff, to how you identify when you look at yourself now? What's that contrast look like?
So prior to, I guess, the quote unquote success you want to call it, right? Um, what I tell people is like I found, because of the lack of self love, I found value in the validation of others, right? If people were telling me, I'm, whether I'm good looking or I'm good at, for me actually at the time it wasn't even like the looks part. It was like just people's like just I felt like nobody really cared about me. That's what I really like. I felt like people didn't value me. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
anytime someone would do something, like I always had a big heart. I was always the type of person who was always trying to help people. You know what I'm saying? And when it wasn't received or someone turned around and disrespect me backwards, it would hurt because I'm like, yo, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I just didn't feel valued. And that's partly again why I was fighting in places I shouldn't have been. Music in the beginning almost was like a way for me to feel valued, because anytime I was going through something painful, anytime I was going through, feeling like I wasn't worth shit, I would drop a song, or I'd write a song, I'd make it. And the talent, the being able to do that was, the first dopamine hit. But the second one was the reception from everybody. Like, oh, yo, the song's fire, bro. You know what I'm saying? You're cold, man. You're so good, this and that. That made me feel like I was worth something. So
Mm,
in a way, it was a crutch, or it was a band-aid for the true problem of like, yo, you gotta really
interesting.
love yourself. But the talent was what made me feel like I was worth something. That's where the confidence came from. Anytime anyone said anything, I'm like, hey, you know, you good at music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas now the confidence comes from, and it still comes from that, you know what I'm saying? But I tell myself like, okay, like what I stand for, the things I've accomplished, the things of that nature, like those are the things is where the confidence comes from, and then just constantly improving myself. So it comes from a different place. So two different identities, I guess. I don't know if that answers that question.
No, 100%. And I think in your own growth, it's almost like you're able to even recognize that. Because some people, I mean, what you said there, a lot of people will never recognize that. Some people go into like their 50s, 60s and be like, oh, no, I do XYZ thing. People validate me, and that's where my confidence comes from. It's almost like that extrinsic validation never goes anywhere. Right. So you at a young age were like, well, I get the dopamine hit. And some people don't even know what dopamine is. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of, it's crucial, and I think it's important because you were able to recognize that. Whereas now it's kind of like, yeah, these are great things, these are great parts of me, but it's not who I am as a person. Like who I am is distinct to who I view myself as, right? Which I think is massive, and to have that approach to it and have that philosophy now in life is going to help you just continue to move forward, man. But
100%.
we're already coming up on the hour, dog, and this went by hella fast.
I know. I know.
So, I mean, before you go anywhere, just what are some closing words you'd like to leave to some of the younger guys that are listening to this, maybe going through heartbreak and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I have a couple points. Number one, when you're on a self improvement journey, it's easy to lose track of the end goal, right? Whether, life starts changing, whether you get complacent, whatever it is. A conversation I had to have with myself recently when I was hitting that point was like, hey, the job's not finished. That's that final version there. You're not there yet, and your actions are acting as if your actions are your your actions are that of a person who's already made it. You haven't made it yet. Why are we sitting back? You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Have that honest conversation with myself and say, hey, we ain't there yet. Job's not finished. So that's what I would say. Make sure you have those honest conversations with yourself, and make sure your actions reflect who you want to be, and not, I guess, make sure they reflect who you want to be, and not a place where you're not at yet. You haven't earned that. I haven't earned the
yeah,
down, and you know what I'm saying. So
yeah,
you'll be working. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is that your self love, it has to come from within. A lot of things you realize stem from the fact that you don't. And a lot of people don't have that love for themselves. You know what I'm saying, or that confidence. You know what I'm saying.
mhm,
You know. maybe everyone has insecurities, whatever it is. I would say if it's possible to work on those insecurities, obviously work on them. You know what I'm saying? Because that is where a lot of that self love comes from, is being able to not so much fixing the insecurity, because that does help too, but the fact that you are able to work towards a goal and make it happen. Confidence comes from achieving things. You know what I'm saying? But I would say definitely try to get work on that self love, work on trying to become somebody that you're proud of, and honestly make sure that the things that make you love yourself are things that actually matter. Not materialistic stuff, not cars or whatever it is. Make it be your character. If everything's stripped from you today, what reason would you have to still be proud of yourself? Your character, how you carry yourself, the value you add to the people's lives around you. Those are the things that should really build your confidence. Everything else should just helps, what I'm saying? And realize that if you go through a heartbreak, whatever it is, it ain't the end, my man. It's the beginning. Because if you play your cards right, it's either gonna break you if you let it, or it's going to be the one thing that changes your life forever. And you're going to look back and be like, I'm glad this happened because this is who I am
Mhm.
now. It's all about how are you going to take this situation and make it your own? Are you going to let it destroy you, or are you going to use it to build you into the man you want to be?
Perfect words of wisdom, man.
Appreciate
Beautiful, beautiful. And I honestly, I couldn't agree more. It's a perfect way to end the episode. But before you take off, Kel, man, let us know, where can we find you? Let us know when your album's dropping, all that good stuff, and any other links that you got.
100%. So you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok at Real Kel Domo. So it's RealKelDomo. That's the music. That's my personal page. That's my main page. Anything fitness related, I post a little bit on the main page, but you can follow my Instagram. It's Dojo Domos. So it's DOJODOMOS. That's on Instagram, Facebook. I mean TikTok, same thing. On YouTube, Kel Domo. On all streaming services, it's just Kel Domo, Kel space Domo. That's where you can check me out.
Perfect. And again, all the links are always going to be in the description. Kel, this was awesome. Definitely want to have you on again, talk some more. But until the next episode, we'll see you guys then.